You gotta stay hydrated and continue to be freaking hilarious.
What's shakin' bacon? Welcome to the Bartender and the Butcher. Today is all about the easiest piece of beef that you can cut, the eye round. Let's get into it. You'll find the eye round on the butt end of the cow. It is a super lean portion of the cow. There is a fat cap on one side. Sometimes the fat will wrap around a little bit. It's log-like or cylindrical in shape, and it starts out on one end very round and then tapers and kind of flattens out on the other end, and it comes to almost a point. The grain runs in all the same direction from end to end. So that, coupled with its log-like shape, makes it so that you can just slice across the grain all the way down, and that's literally it. It is the least complicated piece of meat you will ever see. When I am cutting an eye round, I'm usually cutting roasts, thinly sliced steaks, which are 1/2 inch or less in thickness, regular steaks, which are 3/4 inch to 1 inch in thickness, chunks for stew or kebabs, and strips for stir fry. Now, of course, when you're cutting your own meat at home, the world is your oyster when you're the one holding the knife. That sounded violent. Anyway, to cut super thin slices with just a knife, I would recommend chilling your eye round in the freezer for about 30 minutes to an hour to let it firm up, and that'll make thinner slices easier to achieve. This eye round has quite a bit of fat on it, just around. I am not going to trim any of that because there's next to no marbling throughout this piece of meat. Now, there are little bits of silver skin in certain places, so I am going to take care of those and cut those off because we know they'll just be chewy. There's like these membranes that are also all over it. That just comes from it being separated from the rest of the round. So sometimes I'll cut them off if they are kind of hanging off, essentially. Like this looks like fat, but it's also just kind of covered in a membrane that'll be chewy and kind of gross. So we're gonna clean that bit up. And then as you can see, there's a little bit of silver skin here. You can clean that up if you want. Today I will take care of it. Honestly, a lot of times eye rounds, you can buy them and they're super, super clean all the way around. It just kind of depends on how they were removed from the rest of the round. But I'm not mad about the extra bit of fat around this guy. So from what I've seen, eye rounds are often sold in roast form. Let's see, how big of a roast do I want to cut? Probably just like, yeah, we'll cut that big. I'm not a super big fan of eye round roasts. I've had one too many dry eye round pot roasts in my day to subject myself to that, but maybe this is an area of potential growth for me. Finally be able to cook an eye round roast that doesn't turn out dry as heck. I'll put that experiment on my to-do list. Until then, the roast that I'm cutting today will most likely be cut down into another form in the future, but leaving it like this now gives me more options later. Putting this guy aside. Now, thinly sliced eye round steaks cook super duper fast. They're great for steak and egg breakfasts. Take your time when you're slicing these. I like to hold on to the end that I'm slicing off so that to keep it more steady. Now these are a little less than 1/2 inch in thickness. I really like to try to get them as thin as I can. And like I said, you can stick this in the freezer to help it firm up to be able to cut even thinner eye round steaks. But yeah, I'm not doing that right now. As you can see, the fat that runs through eye rounds kind of looks more veiny than anything, but I would not consider this marbling. And I'm not going to trim off any of the fat because look at how lean this boy is. Look at how lean. It needs all the help it can get. This eye round is definitely on the bigger side, but I like the way it looked better than the other option that I was presented. With the regular thickness steaks, more likely than not, I will be tenderizing these when I do end up cooking them. I'm thinking chicken fried steak is on the future dinner menu. A few random pieces of information are that sometimes with eye rounds or bottom rounds or top rounds, the round in general, the meat will develop this sort of iridescent shimmer almost. It's kind of reminiscent of a mermaid's tail, or like when you see after rains, like an oil spill on the road. Do you know what I'm talking about? When it's like green and blue and sparkly. That doesn't mean the meat is bad. The meat is not bad. It has to do with the light reflecting off of the meat itself. It's just a quirky thing about round, but it's completely fine. The only time you have to be worried about any meat actually being bad is if it's a deep green color, is mushy or stinky or sticky or slimy. But the iridescentness that you will sometimes see on a package of eye round steaks at the store is completely normal. I remember the first time I saw it and I pulled it off the shelf to show my manager, and he was like, "Good eye. It's completely fine. Put it back out there." So yeah, it's a good piece of information to have. Another weird thing about round, well, actually this happens with most beef, but it is very, very apparent in round. So say I were to leave the eye round roast in the fridge for a couple of days and then decide I want to slice it into steaks. I can do that. When you slice into oftentimes it'll be when you slice into a roast, or you just slice into a piece of meat that has been in one sliced state for a day or two, maybe, it'll form this ring around the edges, a little bit in from the edge. It'll just form this discolored ring. That is also completely fine. It has to do with oxidation and certain parts of the meat being exposed to air while the inside isn't. It is completely fine. It is totally normal. It's not pretty, but it is totally normal. So keep that in mind if you were to, like I said, slice up this roast in a couple of days and you would see this dark ring around the edges. It's totally fine. Hopefully I explained that in a clear and concise manner. These are some good looking eye round steaks. I'm not gonna lie to you. For the strips of stir fry and the chunks, I am going to trim the fat off of the edges. Honestly, I would recommend putting this fat aside to render down in a pan before you cook a steak. It is definitely still very useful. So I'm gonna put the fat aside to render out. And then for the chunks and the strips, like I said, I like to slice the eye round across, going with the grain first. If I were doing chunks, then I would cut this thicker, and then I would slice them into, square-ish type pieces. I'm just going to cut all of this into strips though. I'll take each piece and then just slice it across the grain perpendicularly to get these strips that have a really short grain in them so that they, pull apart. It's a better experience of eating. So just slicing across that grain for the strips. These are a good size. You can always obviously customize the size of everything that you cut at home, which is a perk. We're saving money, we're getting more bang for our buck, and we are in control of how everything comes out. There's a lot of benefits, obviously, to cutting meat at home, which is something I hope you're interested in if you're watching this video. If you're just here for the entertainment, I hope I entertain you. And you've got some good strips for stir fry. If I were still working in the department, this actually would be just about an entire package of stir fry strips. This would fill up a 10 tray. And that's it for cutting. That's all. So the next stop for all this meat is the vacuum sealer before it hits the freezer. And after that, I'll meet you back here. I went over a couple cooking methods that I'd recommend while we were cutting, but I'll go over those one more time and then add in a couple other suggestions. I-round and round in general is great for tenderizing or pounding out flat, used in dishes like chicken fried steak or rouladen, which are German beef roll-ups that are filled with onions and pickles and bacon and mustard. They're really good. My dad loves them. I wouldn't recommend a low and slow approach with I-round just because it dries out so easily. Now you could wrap it in something like bacon to add a little bit more fat to the situation. I personally don't like bacon wrapped food items. I like my bacon crispy in a way that just never happens when it's wrapped around another food. But that is so not the point of this video. Overall, I would highly recommend cooking I-round roasts and the regular thickness steaks to just medium, pulling them off the heat or out of the oven 5 to 10 degrees before your desired internal temperature so they can carry over cook the rest of the way. And then for roasts, slicing them super thinly for serving. The thin steaks cook super fast and are convenient in a pinch. If you're able to cut your I-round super duper thin, I really like them for soups like hot pot or pho, where the hot broth is cooking the beef right before you eat it. Generally, thinly slicing the I-round before or after you cook it is a great idea. The short length of the grain, because of how thinly you slice it, lends to a more tender serving of beef. In general, I'd go for a quicker cooking method like a fast pan sear or a stir fry. Also, I almost always recommend serving I-round anything with some sort of sauce or gravy. As you can probably deduce, I-round is not at the top of my list, but just because it's not one of my go-to pieces of meat doesn't mean it isn't yours, and it definitely deserved its own breakdown video. I'm hoping that with all of the I-round options that I have now, I'll find some new favorites that I can add to my rotation. I'll keep you updated. Thank you for watching today's video. I hope you enjoyed learning about the humble I-round. If you did, please leave us a like, a comment, and subscribe for more bartending and butchery. And until next time, let's do this. I want to talk about some quirky shit. Let's do that again. Cabinet's open. Oh! Almost fell. Okay. Can I? We're good. We're good. We're gonna start cutting this bitch. See? That one's wonky. Battery's gonna die. Hold on. Okay. Back to our regularly scheduled programming. I should drink some water. I mean, that was right. That was right. Oh, that's not right. That's so funny. But do it one more time. You can do this. I should just stand. Soft knees. Soft knees. That was good. One more time. I think they got progressively worse as I went through and tried them again. I'm done? Damn. Okay. Man, I hope this video is good. I feel like I've made this so much more difficult on myself. But since it is such a simple thing to cut, I want the video to be enjoyable, chock full of useful information. This is indeed me talking to myself.